Welcome to the panel of digital education. My name is Caroline. I'm also an educator at the School of Design Thinking for a very long time, for more than 10 years now. And so I've also seen the transition at the D-School from the analog to the digital education world. And so I'm looking forward to the panel that Claudia is going to host, whom I believe by now all of you know, who's also seen lots of transition from analog to digital. And yeah, I think it's also one of your heart topics, this panel. And yeah, then we have Peter Fagerström, who's from EduCrafter, who has been working in the field of digital education, I think before it came on vogue. And we'll have two digital panelists with him. There they are. I believe the one on the right must be Anja Reul, yeah? Anja Reul Hessen, yes. Anja Reul, who's from Hessen, one of Germany's federal states, and who's there working at the Ministry of Education in the kind of digital department, or for like the Department for Digital Education. And then we have Airina, whose name is, for me, so complicated to pronounce that I would ask her to do it herself, because it's Volungeviciene when I do it, but I'm sure that's wrong. Is it right? Yeah? Okay.
Yes. Okay.
Do you want to say it yourself?
Airina Volungeviciene.
Oh, that sounds also much nicer. Okay. From Eden, which is the Digital Learning Europe network. And I've also been quite fascinated by when I've seen in your CV since when you're working on digital education, because that's since 1997, like long before digital came into the mainstream. And yeah, so let me hand over to Claudia, and looking forward to your to the panel. And again, the online audience, please feel free to write your questions also during the sessions already in the chat, then I can hand them over.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, Caroline, for the introduction, and also thanks to you three, Peter with being me here on site, and you both digitally joining Anja and Airina. So I think for the topic, it's also a perfect setup. Because we'd like to dive a bit more into digital innovations in education, and also thinking about, like, with design thinking, how we could address those topics. And there's one, I mean, big confession, me personally, but also us as the D-schools around the world would have to make is, we would never have thought by ourselves that our future in terms of design thinking education would be digital. So if the pandemic would not have happened, I'm pretty sure by now we would have started to continue to use a few digital tools, but we would not have dared to create a prototype programs that are purely virtual. Why? Because it's a different constellation, and it's tough and it's hard. If you meet in an analog way, there's different ways of interacting. I can look at Peter, he can look back at me. If I look at Anja and Airina, I have no clue whether, if I look at you on the screen, if this actually is the right line. I think I have to look up there somewhere into the camera that you get the feeling I'm looking at you, but now I get the feeling I'm looking at the media tech guy next to the camera and not the panelists. So why I'm saying that, so there is a lot of potential, like in digital tech, in education, but maybe it's also difficult to really bring that to life when it comes to these type of working constellations for interdisciplinary teamwork, collaboration, etc. So therefore, long story short, I'm really looking forward to this panel, and also to learn from your different experiences, because we brought you together because you, as Carolina already said, are representing different perspectives. So I think with Airina, as you're also going to start, everybody will give a short introductory statement. We can also hear and learn a lot in terms of that the future skills that are needed are not only the 4 C's, creativity, critical thinking, collaboration, and communication, but the actually future skills of the past and now of the future are actually also digital skills, and how can we address those, and how can we further develop those in terms of also from a framework perspective. And I think with Peter, we're also going to hear and learn a bit more about like how to scale those, how to bring them also together from, I'd like to say, EdTech interoperability, and also how to make that work. And with Anja, I'm really looking forward to hear and learn more how you can bring that subject into schools. So we have like different actors representing different activities involved. Without further ado, I'd like to hand over to Airina to start sharing with your statement, and then we have Peter and Anja joining before we then go into a joint discussion. Airina, I hope that the tech is working out, because you also have a few slides, and I see them in front of me. The audience will be in about a second. There we go.
Thank you very much, Claudia, and hello everyone, hello colleagues, nice to see you all. Yes, I would like to start maybe already with the second slide, just to save time, telling that I would like to share with you the perspective, maybe that actually the innovation for me would be not the technology itself, you know, as a tool developed, so to say, and how innovative it is, because I think this is one of the most still urgent challenge for many of us in Europe and on the globe. But looking broader from the perspective of education, we have been discussing, and we reached some kind of agreement that in recent decades, the following innovations in education were reached thanks to technological development and technological enhancement of teaching and learning. You see a list here of different concepts: open educational resources, practices, virtual mobility, and many, many other things. Actually, if we looked at it from the perspective of the impact that it brings to education, or the potential that it can create in the area of learning and teaching, then I think these are the right keywords. Touching very slightly upon you just mentioned, Claudia, that up to now we've been maybe convinced that we have either strategic thinking or creative thinking or whatever else, other type of thinking. But I was always reflecting on it, and I think that actually, in order to implement all these types of innovations in education properly, matching the didactical, the side, the pedagogical side, with the technological potential, with the technology that is correctly identified and put into practice, we need design thinking. So I think the potential of design thinking is overarching. Next slide, please. So far, we have very, very well recognized technologies that support learning and teaching, and I indicated here the technologies that are mainstreamed, so to say, in education organizations, mostly during the time of pandemic, but they were very well identified by learners and teachers well before. Next slide, please. But after pandemic, we have new trends and challenges. We have the courage to call people who came newly into the area as newcomers, and now they are in the same roadway. So the people use the same or new or the same but simplified solutions, and then we have challenges here. We start discussing sustainability of these solutions and also where they belong to. We know, and it's, I think, common truth, that the dispute and the difficulties to find the common language existing between IT people or information system people and people in education. And I think we start a new cycle of these discussions again. And some of the innovations, let's say, or some of the driving ideas in Europe and beyond, I think, need to be revisited, because some like policy funding schemes support EdTech, but we see that it is sometimes tech ed, so technology is put before education. So we, I think, now are in the spiral where we identify ourselves learning anew. In the next slide, I made a reference to digitally competent organization models. So in EU, we have this framework since 2015. But as you will see in the next slide, the questions remain the same, and we find our universities and schools and vet organizations not being digitally competent yet. We, in the majority of cases, are not able to identify the strength, what is going well, and why, what are the factors, enabling factors, what are the reasons, and then where we need to improve. Then we restart the discussion on teacher digital competencies, as you, Claudia, also mentioned. I think this is one of the challenge areas. And learner competencies, of course, student competencies. But then I think the other points refer to institutional cultural things. So how much flexibility institutional regulations support, and then how technological solutions are selected, starting with the open source, commercial and other solutions, and of course coming to the criteria that I don't think institutions are able to identify and measure their solutions on the basis of this. And I think everything falls under design thinking, how we create our organizations in a digitally competent way. I don't know how much time actually I have for the pledges. I prepared 2 references, but maybe I will describe them later in our panel. So maybe I would leave these questions for now.
Yeah, thank you, Airina. I think there was a perfect also way of putting together the really generic questions, and I think there are also at least one that I can tie directly to Peter in order to also continue that input, because Airina was also talking about that. Is it either TED Ed or Ed Tech, in terms of thinking about once you start building new learning models, educational models around that, by, if you have a design thinker's perspective on, as a human-centered approach. But the question is, sometimes we don't know what it's out there in terms of tech that you can build on. And as I know that you operate and work in that field since several years, it would be great to hear from your perspective. What's your answer maybe for that, to prevent maybe too much tech ed, but also have good ed tech?
Pedagogy before technology. Now, I suppose we can go home. That's kind of the core here. Yes, it's what we very often see, and when we talk about ed tech especially, is they either come from big corporations, and then we talk about publishing houses, and they make PDFs online. Sorry if somebody from a publishing house here. And then we have the startup scene who come with their startup ideas, and it's IT engineers building educational technology, and then it's really tech ed. And this has been going on for many years. There is a completely new generation now being grown, I would say, throughout our innovation learning ecosystems, and maybe we can put digital in there as well. That really is taking learning into consideration for this. I'm from Finland, and I'm going to jump back through Finnish history a little bit, back to the 70s. So in the 70s, we started something called Kulkuri School, so Wanderer School. And this school is made for expats, Finnish expats who go abroad, so that Finnish kids can have Finnish education wherever they are in the world. And in the 70s, as you might know, there wasn't too many computers around. So it was a snail mail school. Everything was mailed out to kids. They did their school, and then they sent it back to the teachers in Finland. In the 90s, something called the Baltic University Program was started when the wall fell. And this is for the 14 countries around the Baltic Sea. And how they did distance was through satellite TV. So now we already could see the other person on the other side, and we could actually have a conversation. And we could do hybrid education. So we had our different lectures in different places, and then that was a satellite link. Yes, it didn't always work so smoothly, but there was a connection there. In the 2000s, I would say we had the boom of the content management system, the learning management systems, the Moodles, and all of that. And I remember my university, I was part of setting up those first ones. And we did, we even tried out other like content management systems. Could they be used for learning? In most cases, it was pretty poor. And still people are like afraid of Moodle, for example, because of what they experienced back in those days. In 2015, I just finished running a Finnish school abroad. So already Finnish school abroad means we had also teachers with video because we didn't have all the teachers there. And then we really started with hybrid education. And 2016, me and my co-founder took part in a hackathon in Finland. That is, I suppose, most people here know what a hackathon is. And one of the mentors was the head of technical development at the ministry. So this was a guy who slept in a sleeping bag on a concrete floor during 48 hours, and we had a conversation at 2 a.m. How can we bring hackathons into education? And they became our first client for my company, EduCrafter, now. And that kind of kick-started for us this kind of hybrid between Estonia, because I run the school in Estonia, and Finland. So immediately cross-border design thinking and innovation processes. How do we bring this into education? And the first event we did with teachers in Finland was what we call an EduJam, which is a double diamond combined with team learning. And team learning is a kind of learner-centered approach where we don't have teachers, we have coaches. It's a coach on the side, not a sage on the stage. And bringing these all together in a digital as well. So we use digital tools to bring in participants from outside. Then I'm going to touch upon a few things that Airina also mentioned. So DigiComp, but how about Life Comp at EngComp? If we're talking about design thinking and the way we work here with, then we need to bring all of these competence systems that we have now kind of identified, but they're not activated, they're not dynamic yet. And how do we do that through these kind of processes? This would be very interesting to look at. And then, of course, the institutional aspect that you also mentioned. I remember 15 years ago, working in regional development, the Wuppertal Institute was talking about the institutional aspect of sustainability. So we have the three common ones, the economic, the ecological, and the societal, the cultural. But the institutions are frameworks that we have created on which, we build our societies on education. This is how we create ourselves as human beings, our education systems.
Great, I'd like to build on that because it's, I think, the perfect bridge building part because you already said the first word of your statement was what's the answer to that question? It's pedagogic. And then also linking not only when it comes to being innovative in that field, not only have this digital competencies, but also have them as life competencies. So therefore, I'd like to, with those two buzzwords, hand over to Anja Reul. She works with the Federal Ministry of Education in one of the federal states of Germany, Hessen. And I think it would be very interesting for us in terms of the audience in here, but also virtually, to learn from how you started the project of establishing a new subject a new subject for secondary schools that actually is like trying to combine those things, right? To build on digital competencies, but also bringing in SDGs, sustainability, in order to have that competency to make sustainable choices. And you call that not only a prototype, but you also call it digital worlds, digitale Welten. So therefore, we would just would love to hear from you, what you did so far and why.
Hello, everybody. I'm very pleased to join this forum today. Digitalization permeates all areas of life, and therefore we also need new innovative pedagogical concepts. For this reason, we have introduced a new school subject, which we call Digital World, digitale Welt. The subject is currently being tested. The school subject addresses not only the basics of computer science, we go far beyond by linking these basics to the objectives of an economic and ecological and sustainable development of our society. Clearly spoken, in the classroom, students are taught how digital technologies can contribute to solving social, economic and ecological problems. These skills are necessary to that young people can successfully start their professional career. With the introduction of the new teaching subject, we are pioneers in Germany, I think. And of course, we are very happy that we can offer this to our students. At the moment, the school experiment is running at 12 schools with 70 classes starting in grade 5. We are talking about around 1,500 students. As already said, the students learn in 2 additional school hours per week the basics of computer science by solving real-world problems in the field of economy and ecology. The basics of computer science and digital world consists of coding, use of office software, and so on. For an example, one of our schools has a hen house, and it was always annoying to find somebody who locks the door in the evening. And the student solves the problem by coding a program that closes the door automatically when the sun goes down. Obviously, hawks and foxes can no longer steal the chicken, and everybody is happy again. And in addition, the subject addresses important topics as data protection, cybercrime, and responsible media use. And of course, we work hard to design the teaching content vivid, action-oriented, and interesting. We carried out the pilot project in cooperation with the HPI and the University of Frankfurt. The HPI is involved with the design thinking workshop in the conception and elaboration of the teaching content. It's very important to us that our students understand the current digital key technologies and the meaning of several buzzwords. We all need the skills to act independently and self-determined in the digital age. Obviously, we must start a school with all this stuff as early as possible. The introduction of the new school subject, Digital World in Hessen, is therefore an essential step, and we hope that we can also be a role model for other federal states in Germany.
Thanks a lot, and I also had the chance to be part of that bit of an initiation of that project. First of all, I want to really congratulate you, because like typically we think about when everything comes from a ministry, specifically in education, it's just a change of plans, right? In terms of we're going to tell you what to do, and taking on now this as a prototype to learn from, to start with a couple of piloting schools, even though it's already and that's meant in a positive way, a big pilot with 1,500 students. I think that's also great in terms of not just putting yourself at risk, but in terms of putting you out there. And the point that you already mentioned in terms of being maybe hopefully leading for other federal states or for other institutions, I think is really something I just want to underline in terms of I really appreciate that. So therefore, I'd like now to come to a few questions that I also would like to discuss with all of you. You also had a metaphor, so I'd like therefore also to come back to Airina, because you were talking, I'm now going to talk about chicken and egg. You had the horn and the fox, as far as I remember. So like if you now look at also what you have been presented to us in terms of like this overarching framework in terms of that this has been out there as it's already out there. So why is there not so many other initiatives that we see? Like, because you also, as Peter said, you have already great best practices from the mid-10, so 2010 till 2020. So what can we do differently in order to Airina to spread those best practices? So how to come there?
Sometimes I think in the past, also sometimes in the present, we tend to replicate some simple processes. The way we know them, we move them to digital space. Of course, one of the examples is how traditional, let's say, learning and teaching process, like a lecture, a classroom, was moved online, and during pandemic we saw many examples, because the majority of schools and higher education institutions and that were not prepared. They could never prepare for that. They could prepare, but they didn't want to. Actually, I think again the mistake is in the reasoning and in the thinking. If we put, I liked very much the example from Anja about sustainability, let's say. If we think about the farthest goal to learn the lessons, or to teach the lessons and to learn the ways how we can make sustainable solutions, what we need is as many examples, cases, stories as possible. Our life contexts, being it in a countryside, in a city, is limited to what we have. So sometimes we really need to enhance or support teaching and learning with such stories and cases. I will give you an example. Personally, I think virtual reality and the simulations have more negative impact to our brains, at least having read a lot of literature from psychiatrists and psychologists. I think also watching some generations growing with the deficit attention and then having mindfulness problems, we might put some research data that shows direct link with the overuse of technology, distraction, and many other things. But on the other hand, if we create a very purposeful scenario and use of virtual reality, simulations, and other types of animations and stories into the classroom, like we just heard, I think that would bring a very targeted, a very powerful, and also very simple, but in the right place and in the right time put application of technologies for learning purposes. This is difficult, and we also have to identify that we think in a variety of ways that makes us also make decisions that go towards one or another direction. Sometimes we want to mainstream things and then see the lessons learned. Sometimes we go too much to the software and programs that need to be embedded. So there are many, many reasons for the failures. So I think purposeful design thinking is a solution here.
Thank you for that. And I think, Peter, you'd like to build on that, maybe also on the aspect of purpose, maybe also on the aspect of how to create those examples that you then also can scale. I think that's also coming from this like startup hackathon perspective. There might be already lots of great examples out there, but how to really get that into, not really, I would say, in the mainstream, but like get these lessons shared earlier, quicker, because it's also, if we look at design thinking as an approach, that's what we actually try to do. It's not like to have a creative process, but also a process of implementation that's already part of the design.
Yes, I'll continue on the VR very shortly
Okay,
before I'll
go
jump to that. So when we have VR solutions today, we can see that for example, learning in dangerous environments. So, I mean, big kitchens, for example, is a very good example where you can learn the processes and actually do the physical work in VR. And this sounds a bit odd, that you can actually, but the body doesn't distinguish between whether you do it in the VR or whether you do it physically. Because you use your body when you use VR as well. It's not a 360 video. We're past that stage. So you actually get experiential learning through the VR set. And now with higher grade standalone sets, you don't have the cables even. So you can move around in the space and you can actually do physical things. Yes, grabbing is still a problem, but we're pretty close to that to make it natural as well. And then with audio, then you're completely immersed. If you haven't played modern games on standalones in a 10 by 10 meter room, I highly, highly encourage you to do that. But start by sitting down, because some people get nauseous. And then play as slow as you can, because then the body can get used to it, or learn as slow as you can. The other one is 2D theoretical kind of concepts can be very easily explained in 3D and with physical manipulation. So we have STEM education solutions, for example, that are super simple, and they explain concepts that students have had, like for hundreds of years, had problems with understanding in 2D, and so very simple. And this comes, of course, from, because I work now in kind of this, in startup we talk about deal flow. So first you come to the hackathon, you have your ideas, you make a concept, then you make a prototype, but then after that you go into an incubator and then an accelerator, and then you start scaling. And we can now see at the accelerator stage, we see these examples that are really, I would say, revolutionizing for many concepts that we have big problems with. So this is kind of the VR pitch. That's only one technology. We should, of course, use many other ones. And that kind of touches upon the systemic that you were talking about as well. I heard in the main stage today as well when they talked about the global design challenge about these levers. But nobody says systems thinking. You're talking about systems thinking, but you're not saying the words. That kind of brings those. So you talk about design thinking, but thinking in systems.
We talk about that. I mean, that's also something, in terms of, if we look at the educational system, or innovations in the field of education, that's actually what we look at, because like the system, also what we have now here, gets defined by actually the system of actors and the objects and also the activities we do. So therefore, also same with the digital health that we have been talking about, if it's now about trying to find also that kind of innovation sweet spot taught in there. There might be several, and also within the system there might be also several layers where we actually can find those. We can come back to something I would say rather essential of design thinking, say let's take always the learner's perspective, try to design something that's going to be meaningful for them for now and also us in the future. But I think also with the other examples, and I think this is also what I think Anja, Reul, you can maybe also comment on that, because I'd like to pass it on to you. It might be also other group of actors. It might be the so-called teachers and educators at schools that have to be maybe convinced or have to be empowered that they are not just waiting for you as a ministry to come up with here's a new box in terms of here's a new topic that we want you to work on, so how can we empower them to maybe pick up this by themselves or how to do this faster. So that's, I think, is actually also meant by this actor's perspective. And maybe you can also share, before we're also going to pass into the audience, also a couple of your insights about like how to do that for the systems perspective with a specific group of actors. Because like in lots of like our federal states, they work for the state, so they will stay there until they're 65. So you have to work with those people. Yeah.
Well, the teachers are trained before and during the start of the project, work on the development of the curriculum and network with each other to exchange the successful teaching formats. For the participation, the schools receive an additional allocation of hours, the lessons are not graded in the pilot, and so on. I think is a problem when the mindset is not in the head of the teachers. You know, we have different teachers, teachers who are very modern and IT affine, but on the other hand, teachers are old-fashioned in this term. You know.
Thanks for sharing. I also now want to open either to the online audience or also to the audience in here. If there are any questions from your side, I know that there are also educators around in terms of also program designers, experiential learning designers, and so on. So
I'm bringing a question from the online audience, but that was already half answered. Because it went in the direction, I think also to Anja, what you said before, when you're designing the new digital world program, like how much you're really integrating the systems perspective, and kind of if you have like a small UX lab associated with it during the development of the pilot, and kind of how much you really go in the direction of system thinking. So I think you already kind of answered it, but maybe you can elaborate on it, really on the systems thinking perspective in setting up pilots also, and in education in general.
If the result is positive with the 12 schools, we will expand the experiment. The aim is to be able to offer the subject digital world to all schools in Hessen. But we have no results because in the beginning, you know, and yes, the Ministry of Education in Hessen launched several projects to support and accelerate the digital transformation of the education system. For example, in addition to the new subject digital world, there are also projects to improve the digital equipment and to introduce collaboration platforms. And last but not least, to hype the great opportunities and techniques that come with transformation. Also for me, I try to get practical experience whenever possible. In concrete terms, I deal with coding, for example, C#, Scratch, AI reporting system, and so on. And the schools learn step by step.
Thank you. Do you want to build on that, Peter? On these systems thinking question yes. From the
definitely
online
systems thinking. I love building on that. I'm going to jump to the kind of smallest parts of the system in the education system. something called like learning bits or learning steps.
Oh, yeah.
So Estonia is looking into what are learning outcomes built up from, and they're working on identifying what are the different learning steps we need to take on this learning path to get to a learning outcome. And the reason why they're doing this is because the Ministry of Education in Estonia has an MOU with EdTech Estonia. So it's a public-private partnership. How can we digitally create a better education system? And if we then look at, we have learning steps, learning outcomes. Now, what are we going to do with that? So of course, then we can, with the machine, we can look at all the data. And in Estonia, 100% of the data, except education, is online. They use an interoperability layer called X-Roads that connects all the different silos. So in health, for example, as an Estonian citizen, you can go and flip the switch. You have access to my data, you do not have access to my data. And I have complete control of my own health data. Who do I share it with? When do I share it? And so on. So these, which is, I mean, this was, I was sitting there at the end of the last discussion, and they're trying to kind of figure out this one. It already exists, many of these things.
No. Obviously.
X-Roads is developed between Estonia and Finland, and 15% of Finnish data is now on X-Roads. So we're kind of trying to figure this one out. And the next phase now then, X-Road systems are interoperable with each other. They already exist in different kind of organizations around the world, and you can basically flip a switch and they talk to each other. So what is the global backbone, the global underlying systems we can connect this learning data to? Because then we can use all the different educational technology solutions around the world and use the best practices. And if we go then technology way, the Web3, with blockchains, with programmable streams of money, with smart contracts. All of this can be automated. So one of the things that they talked a lot about, I mean, here as well, but in the US is we buy licenses for technology, and then it's being unused because teachers don't wanna, don't know how to, or just not interested. And if you pay by learning outcome, then those best practices will be the ones used. And some certain platforms will not be used because everybody is so against them and they create so much problems. So this is part of the systemic future, I would suppose.
Coming also back to making that also these type of systemic changes, because you already started to talk about that in a bit. No? You offer these learning bites in order to create outcomes. So my question to all of you, because there's always the question when it comes to applying, for example, design thinking as a methodology to enable change. So what are actually the outcomes? So if we now think about digital education, digital innovation in education, let it be from a conceptual framework, let it be from introducing a subject matter, or let it be we're going to create these knowledge bites. So how do you envision, I would put this way, learner's success? Because I'll put it also from the design thinking perspective, is instead of giving people grades, what we'd like to kind of further develop is their personal growth potential along future skills, for example, and think about not how many ideas did they create in a team and how good are these ideas, but also in terms of whether they're able to tap into, for example, creative confidence, etc., in order to be more creative in the future. So my question would be here, if you say it's about digital innovation in that sphere, so how can we actually see whether we have achieved something? So that question goes around how do we measure output? It's not only the number of students in those pilots, but what's your understanding in terms of impact? What will be a good impact when it comes to digital innovation in education? I know it's the $1 million code question, but give us some hints, because that's always kind of these discussions we have amongst other actors in those fields?
I think the main challenge is to convince and inspire all stakeholders and to create a sustainable, pleasant working environment in which everyone is maximally motivated. This is also our approach for the new teaching subject, the digital world. We have international not given a curriculum in advance, but let the teachers work creatively to build a curriculum based on their experiences, their expertise and their ideas. We find that allowing maximum freedom and with the project release create forces and also often changes the teacher's mindset.
Thank you for sharing.
I would say that actually the success is when the old is combined with the new. There are elements in the system that come from, many generations, I would say. And I know that we are now moving very fast with innovations based on digital solutions. But I think the failures, the major failures that we've seen also proves that the jumping at it very quickly is one of the factors that brings us to the failure. I think the potential should be established for teachers and learners and schools and universities to find the solution that best meets the purpose of learning. And we cannot mainstream tools, we cannot mainstream solutions. Well, this is my opinion, but I think the best examples of universities in Europe, schools in Europe, when we see the combination of both. And I think the teacher is the one who actually is still able to select responsibly and responsibly what is needed.
I'll go the other way. Democratic education in our public school systems.
What do you mean by democratic?
So democratic education is where everybody in the organization has a voice. And in most schools, there are more kids than teachers. So the power is with whom? Of course, exactly. So with the learner. So learner-driven education. And this we can already do in curriculums. So I've been part of starting a democratic school within the Estonian public school system, within a normal public school as well. So they have what they call a study line, which is democratic. Then, of course, when the learners have the competence to actually do something, that's the learning outcome, be that whatever. And I like this, the old combined with the new, because the old is, we have been learning for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. This is nothing new. It's going from not being able to do something to being able to do something. And now we're getting to the point with digital that we can actually start tracking this. So we're about to kind of get to that gold nugget. What is the closest that you don't know something and when you do know something?
I like the combination of all your answers, because I think that makes really like like if you look at education and learning specifically from that perspective, different perspectives, teachers, learners, then also it's not always like about reinventing the wheel. The combination of old and new makes it also easier for people to accept new ways of, for example, learning and teaching from both perspective, learners and educators. So therefore, thanks for also shedding these lights in terms of different perspectives on there. Caro, I think you kind of indicated to me, or I misinterpreted you, that there's a question from the online? No.
Misinterpreted,
okay.
But I would have a question.
Okay,
actually.
go ahead.
Which is especially like since kind of the difference between analog and let's say old ways of learning and new ways, digital ways. Like, what would you say is kind of the biggest pitfall or the biggest tip, rather, when you go from one for the other? Because you don't want to take just, as you were saying in the beginning, just take kind of the old sheet of paper and turn it into a PDF. But what would you say is kind of the biggest pitfalls or biggest tips you can give when going from analog to digital education formats?
What is learning? I mean, seriously, think about it. What is learning? Because we talk about our education system. Education, education, education. And fair enough, Bildung, yes. And we have the same in Swedish speaking. We talk about utbildning, which is kind of Bildung. So the holistic development of a human being, in a sense. That can be done analog, and that can be done digital. There is really no difference. The pitfalls are, if we just look at the traditional kind of way of looking at education, the academic, read, write, count. I mean, yes, we need these, but that is not education. That's just one layer, like you said, talked about, Claudia.
Yes, yeah. Thank you for this answer. We have a few more minutes, so therefore I just want to, because we talked already about analog, virtual, digital, hybrid, high flex. So what is actually the future of, let's call it education for the moment right now, that you'd like to see in terms of, from your perspectives? Is it analog? Is it digital? Is it hybrid? Is it high flex? Is it whatsoever in terms of, where do you see actually the bright spot, the bright light of the field that you're working in the future?
I was thinking about it just right yesterday, reading a nice book on learning, and I think that I would be very happy to see that we have students at school and then students at university who may step down a little bit, take a breath, have a moment to realize what they have learned and what is the meaning out of it. So the mindful learning, focused learning, I would say autonomous, self-regulated, but also with a teacher, and that they are, of course, digitally competent, but that's it. I mean, they know how to use the tools, but they also dedicate their moments to create new solutions, maybe not digital, maybe something else, because digital was also created one day in the analog.
Right.
So I go for the healthy and mindful education.
Thank you. Peter?
I was going to have a look at my second brain.
Second brain.
My second brain is my phone, where I Google things, and when you say
Google the future.
Yes, I was actually trying to Google the future, and 2 days ago UNICEF they launched a new kind of summary of their last summit of transforming education. So what is the future of education? I suppose they basically have some of the answers in there. So, I mean, we have to remember we're not alone in this. There is so many excellent best practices out there. And let's try to connect these and learn from each other. I think that's at least one of them.
Thank you. Anja? Or Anja?
There's no simple answer to this. As always in pedagogy, people can be completely different types of learners, and the profession of a good teacher is therefore not yet expandable. Learning on and with intelligent systems will gain dramatically in importance. AI is a keyword. So already follows from the fact that teachers cannot have his eyes everywhere, and the shortage of teachers is a growing problem. Platforms will integrated adaptive learning systems will be by bit replace pure download servers for digitized textbooks and extend them with diagnostic and intelligent work instructions. I think this is the future.
Thank you. Thank you a lot. Also here within this combination of thinking about the learner, so have it like healthy, right? That's also something we quite often hear from our students, because also here, like in several settings, for example, design thinking is on top of everything, right? So it's not like integrated and then bringing best practices in terms of open to everyone, and not forgetting about the diversity of all of us in terms of, because we're all learners, but if you're going to make that distinction between like pupils on the one side and educators on the others, so that we have that. So therefore, thanks to all three of you, to Peter here on stage, to Caroline here, and to Airina and Anja. And yeah, that's it for this session. And I'm going to hand it over to Caroline.
Thank you.
And we can give them a bit of applause. So. Thank you.